Today, I'm attempting to do something nearly impossible, which is describing one of the most existential, hard to pin down Mercury signs out there. Hola my beautiful lotus flowers, welcome back or welcome to my channel. If you're into nerding out on everything astrology, spirituality, and self-transformation, this is a community for you. Today we're talking all about having a Mercury in Pisces, and what this means is at the exact time you were born, the planet Mercury was moving through the zodiac sign of Pisces. This is not a video about having sun sign in Pisces. That is completely different. And if you're not entirely sure what the energy of Mercury holds in astrology, I will have a pre-recorded clip before the actual video talking briefly about Mercury and what it means in astrology. So be sure you watch that. Then we'll talk about the general traits of somebody who has Mercury in Pisces, and we'll finish off the video with a couple empowering tips of advice if you have this placement or if you know somebody who does. So I'm not just going to leave you hanging. I'm not going to tell you this is how you are and that's it. I do want to offer you some advice at the end, so be sure you stay tuned for that. For a brief introduction to the planet Mercury, in case you're not familiar with it. Mercury is considered the quote-unquote messenger planet in astrology, ruling over thought, communication, how information is mentally processed, our intellect, routines, and our mental instincts. Mercury is actually the ruler of two zodiac signs, both Gemini and Virgo. Gemini is an air sign and Virgo is an earth sign. Wherever Mercury is at in your natal chart will tell you how you express yourself in regards to what Mercury rules over, such as how you communicate, how you think, etc. But it is very important to pay attention to whether Mercury was retrograde at the time you were born, as this can definitely alter how you express your Mercury placement. And the way that you identify that is there will be a little RX symbol next to your planet. If you're looking at a birth chart that provides this information, you'll see a little retrograde symbol next to this planet symbol, and that will tell you if it was retrograde at the time you were born. This can manifest for so many different ways for so many different people, so I won't be talking about if the planet is retrograde, but a lot of times the traits I talk about, a lot of opposite traits can manifest for this person. Like, for example, say the Mercury placement usually makes the person really good at communication. Well, if it's retrograde, then there's potential that maybe you struggle a lot with communication instead. So keep that in mind. Now for the general traits of somebody who has Mercury in Pisces. But before we talk about those, it's important to keep in mind that Pisces is the mutable water sign ruled by Neptune, co-ruled by Jupiter, and symbolized by the two fish. Number one, their sense of logic and reality can be quite skewed, as most of the time they have a mind that is drifting through the clouds and other realms of consciousness. Pisces' modern ruler is Neptune, the planet of the subconscious mind and illusions, whereas Pisces' traditional ruler is Jupiter, planet of expansion and higher thinking. If you didn't already know, Mercury is actually debilitated in Pisces due to Pisces' planetary rulership. And if you're not quite sure what debilitation means, I will leave a little definition on the screen for you. But it basically means that the planet has a difficult time performing well in this particular zodiac sign. The reason being that the energy of Mercury is extremely quick and logical, whereas the energy of both Jupiter and Neptune, but especially Neptune, are both extremely expansive and complex in their own ways. Neptune and Mercury are practically complete opposites, and Neptune tends to overpower the energy of Mercury. Because of this, that a person with Mercury in Pisces can often seem a bit spacey and may even be branded by some people as airheaded, when in fact this isn't the case. Just think of like Luna Lovegood vibes. She appears quite odd or spacey upon first impression, right? But upon getting to know her, not only is she in the house that's known for its intellectual and eccentric members, Ravenclaw, but she also has an emotional and spiritual intelligence that allows her to know things and see things that many others cannot. Mercury deals primarily with our immediate mental process and what we're conscious of. but Neptune dictates our unconscious mental process. And because Neptune overpowers Mercury, this person's mental process usually functions from a plane of higher consciousness, constantly moving in and out of higher realms of thinking. Because of this, they have a vast imagination most of the time and can pretty much be drowning in their own thoughts and drowning in this imagination at all times. But it's also simultaneously because of this trait that these people tend to have almost effortless spiritual alignment, or an effortless alignment with the unseen knowledge of the world that a lot of others cannot comprehend. Number 2. This placement can have difficulty with their level of focus and their ability to communicate effectively with others. Not only is Pisces ruled by Neptune, but it is also one of the mutable signs, meaning this sign can have a somewhat sporadic yet adaptable nature. With their mind already being lost in the clouds, combined with having a mutable mental process, they can find it difficult to focus in on one thing for too long, especially if it's something that causes them to leave their dreamland for reality. They aren't too interested in the reality of the world at all, such as having to go to typical jobs, watch the news, follow a set routine, study quote-unquote facts of a particular subject, etc. Again, it's because of this mental detachment from the world, from the physical world in general, that they can have difficulty lowering their mind or lowering their communication to a level that is adaptable to the world around them. But another contributing factor to this is the fact that people with Mercury in Pisces also tend to be hypersensitive to other people's wants and needs rather than their own as well. So when they're communicating with people, they're not always telling the complete truth or really expressing their truest thought or what they really feel or what they really think. And it's because they're trying to do this out of consideration for everybody else around them. They tend to be very gentle communicators in that way because they tend to care about how they navigate their communications with everybody else. When they do communicate well, there can almost be kind of a poetic or ethereal beauty to the way that they speak or the way that they articulate. And so oftentimes it's not unlike somebody with this placement to actually communicate better through some type of artistic expression. Maybe just like verbally, straightforwardly speaking and conversation is not always their forte, but if you allow them to express themselves through some artistic means or maybe through music or something of the sort, then they are probably more likely to get their thoughts, expression, and feelings across much more clearly. Number 3, they're extremely aware of and in tune with the energies around them at all times, giving them a natural ability to understand and empathize with anyone. Despite the fact that it can be difficult for them to verbally communicate with others, they have a constant energetic understanding of those around them, a trait that often shows up in water placements since most water signs have some form of heightened intuition. This is partially what can make these individuals incredible at being some sort of healer for others, because they almost take those people's energies and emotions on as their own, giving them an innate ability to understand them without necessarily knowing them at all. As amazing of a quality as this can be, it can tend to make people with displacement have a hard time deciphering between themselves and other people's. The lines can really get blurred, and this can happen a lot to any significant Pisces placements, but this really happens mostly due to, again, Neptune's influence and the fact that this is a water sign combined. Whenever Neptune is heavily involved in the energy of anything, the lines and boundaries between things start to become really, really blurred and muddled together because, again, Neptune is the planet of illusions. So with that type of energy combined with Pisces' very watery, changeable nature, they can easily get swept up by the random streams and branches of people's emotions because they don't really have a strong foundation for themselves to return to. And this is where this placement, knowing themselves and being able to really stay in touch with themselves, is very important. Because, you know, a lot of for example, the earth signs tend to be good at foundations. They tend to be good at having that like solidified foundation or framework that they can go back to. But when it comes to a sign like Pisces that is very like flowy. And when I think of Mercury in Pisces, I think of like a cloud. I think of a cloud, you know, because clouds consist of water, but they change form so often. They're constantly raining and then they disappear and then they get blown by the wind. And I just think of a cloud. And when you have a mind that floats like a cloud, then it can be very easy to lose yourself and lose that sense of foundation if you don't actively build a foundation for yourself. But if you are a Mercury in Pisces that overcomes this potential difficulty, then you can almost be seen as like angelic or otherworldly to other people, because your ability to heal and to understand is just so beyond what a lot of people can comprehend. A lot of people cannot understand how you're able to do what you do and can be completely amazed by it. If you're enjoying this video so far, if you feel like you can relate, if you feel like this is you, or you know somebody who is Mercury in Pisces and you can relate, then be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment down below letting me know what your Mercury sign is, especially if you're Mercury in Pisces, because I love to know who's watching. And don't forget to head over to Patreon, where I do in-depth astrological weekly readings as well as other fun content. So be sure you head over there if you want more astrology content. Number 4. There is a spiritual, often mystical duality to the way that they think and speak, making them simultaneously mysterious yet full of wisdom. Probably one of the most complex symbols in the zodiac is the two fish, representing a Piscean's dual nature, to put it simply. But when you dive deeper into the concept of the two fish, they're a representation of the Piscean's embodiment of every single energy that exists in the zodiac wheel, both light and dark, and their ability to swiftly move through every energy that exists. I know this might sound like an intricate concept to grasp, but basically, they represent the completely nuanced existence of a Pisces, in which Pisces can embody anything and everything depending on what they choose. They can live as both the hero or the villain, or they can be the extrovert and the introvert. They can be loud or they can be dead silent. Basically, every opposite you can think of. Pisces is forever existing in the gray area, potentially moving from one extreme to another at any given moment. So when I think of this energy, I think of like the wise prophets that we always see in movies and shows. And it's because of this nature that Pisceans are often seen as one of the most mysterious and difficult signs to figure out. Oftentimes, they're always trying to figure themselves out as well. With Mercury in Pisces specifically, this trait channels itself into their all-knowing mentality, their all-knowing mental process, where they're really able to grasp, comprehend, and empathize with anyone and everyone, because even the darker parts of the world that a lot of people cannot understand, a Mercury in Pisces can usually naturally understand it, because a lot of times people with Pisces placements like this know the darkness for themselves, or they've experienced it firsthand in some way, and therefore they understand it. Or even if they haven't experienced it firsthand, they just know. They have an inner knowing, because again, the fish, that duality, that embodiment of the yin and the yang, everything that is and everything that isn't, exists within their mentality. They just know. It's another reason that people will often naturally turn to a Mercury in Pisces for some type of healing or some type of therapy. A great example of someone with Mercury in Pisces that uses these abilities is Janae Aiko. She made it her goal to create music that people could not only relate to lyrically, but that would heal people emotionally and physically at the same time by incorporating sound healing. If you listen to her interviews, her voice is very gentle and calm, but she can tend to have a difficult time fully articulating her thoughts, or it seems like she's not fully there all the time. But it's natural for her to transmute everything into music with a message and a divine purpose. Now for a couple empowering tips for somebody who has Mercury in Pisces. Number 1. Curating a solid foundation of self-love and self-worth is extremely important. Having such a sensitive, in-tune mental process makes this person prone to getting lost in everyone else's energy and emotions, as we mentioned earlier, which can turn into extreme forms of anxiety, feelings of insecurity, etc. And although this is a beautiful trait to have, again, that can allow these individuals to become beacons of light that the world definitely needs, they cannot do so without first knowing themselves and building a healthy, strong relationship with themselves. Otherwise, they can forever get more and more lost in other people. More than anything, a consistent spiritual practice would not only be very enjoyable for somebody with this placement, but extremely beneficial, because this is a naturally spiritually inclined placement most of the time. So if they actively take daily steps in a consistent spiritual practice, then they'll be able to build that solidified emotional and spiritual foundation within themselves that becomes more and more unshakable as time goes on, specifically through things like meditation, journaling, and affirmations, because the meditation will be able to slow down and regulate their nervous system and they'll be able to practice returning to their center when they feel shaken by everything else around them. Journaling, because journaling will allow them to get to know themselves better and will build that relationship. It's kind of like journaling is like having a conversation with yourself. So you get to know yourself a lot better, the thoughts that you tend to have, the fears you tend to have, etc. And lastly, with the affirmations, these can help build confidence, because this is definitely a placement that can sometimes maybe be shy or insecure or lack confidence for some reason, and they won't necessarily stand true to themselves when they need to stand true to themselves or when they need to stand up for themselves. So having confident affirmations that you repeat to yourself on a daily basis to help build yourself up every day could also really help you out if you struggle with this particular piece of advice. It's also very important that this placement gets a lot of alone time. They need this alone time in order to build this relationship with themselves. They need that alone time where they are not being externally influenced by their environment, and they can hear themselves think and they can let themselves feel. Number 2, having creative outlets for self-expression are key to their happiness and well-being. Although this sign may not be the best at verbal expression, they do tend to do much better with some form of artistic expression, especially visually or musically. Whatever creative outlet feels best for you, I highly encourage you to take time at least once a week to just let your creativity flow out of you. By transmuting your worries, emotions, thoughts, etc. into something outside of your mind, you may be able to free up a lot of extra stress or clutter that stays in your mind. As I mentioned earlier, this is a placement that can also struggle a lot with focus and can always kind of seem to be gone in their own mind. Well, some of the things that contribute to having a hard time focusing is them never decluttering their mind or never clearing their energetic space. So through spiritual activities and artistic outlets for expression, they'll be able to do a lot of decluttering of the mind and a lot of clearing of their energy. So that way they can focus on things because they're not so all over the place. It's kind of like the way that we clean our house and declutter our house, and it allows us to think clearer and do things more efficiently. The same thing is true for our mental process. We need to declutter and clean up our mental space and our energetic space periodically, so that way we continue to move forward effectively. Once again, if you enjoyed this video or if you learned anything, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so I can reach other people just like you who want to learn about themselves. And leave a comment down below if you're Mercury in Pisces or just your Mercury placement in general, so I know who's watching. And you can head over to my Patreon for in-depth astrological readings every week, as well as other really fun astrology content. And head over to LaBlue Lotus Facebook community, where we talk more about using astrology and spirituality for self-transformation. But for the more personal side of my journey, you can head to my Instagram at Marisa LaBlue, and you can also watch these videos if you haven't already to help you so much more on your own journey. But until I see you in the next video, thank you so much again for being here and for liking and supporting me. Until I see you next time. Adios.